Hey, this is Rick Casalage, injury specialist from exercisesforinjuries.com. In today's video, I wanted to go through 5 back pain relief exercises from yoga. And I'll get Jenna to go through the first one, which ends up being like a wall plank. So what you're doing is we'll go back to the starting position. So you're moving towards the wall, you can bring your hands on the wall, you're going to work your way down the wall, and you're going to bend through the hips, looking at stretching through the hips and stretching through the back. You've got the arms pressed up against the wall, your head's in line with in line with the rest of your spine, and you're going to hold that position for a few seconds. So with this one, when it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, you're looking at 1 set. I'm going to end up doing 2 repetitions, and then the time ends up being, you want to work your way up to 20 seconds. And the intensity ends up being light. We're looking at feeling a stretch in the hamstrings, you could feel the stretch in the glutes, you're going to feeling the stretch in that low back area. So that ends up being the first one. Number 1 ends up being the wall plank. Now moving on to number 2 ends up being downward dog. So getting in that pike position, and then coming out of that pike position, back into a plank, and then back into that downward dog position. So with this one, working on strengthening up the shoulders and strengthening up the back, also working the core. Then we're really working on the flexibility in the hip and in that low back area. So it ends up being an excellent exercise to do. When it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, sets end up being 1. You're looking at doing 5 repetitions. The time ends up being like holding that top position for like 5 to 10 seconds. And the intensity, you should feel it. You should feel your shoulders working, your core working, and feeling a stretch in those hamstrings and glutes. If you have poor flexibility in that area. So moving from the second exercise, downward dog, moving into pigeon pose. So going from downward dog into the pigeon pose. So holding that position for like 5 to 10 seconds, and then you can come out of that pigeon pose, going to that downward dog, bring that leg across. So that left leg towards that right hand, and really stretching out those rotators in the hip. Now looking at sets, reps, time, and intensity, you're going to do 1 set, repetitions, 2 on each side, alternating back and forth. Time, you're looking at starting off with a hold of about 10 seconds, and the intensity ends up being light. Perfect. So that's the pigeon pose. Moving to the 4th one, the 4th exercise ends up being the child's pose. So wide knees, rocking back, hands are out front, and bringing the hips back. Knees are wide, looking at stretching out the hips, the low back area. Arms are out front. You're also getting a little bit of like a traction or pull throughout that spine area. Then you're going to come out of the position. So in that 4-point position, and then go back into that child pose. Wide knees, bringing the hips back, having the hips rest on to the feet, and then dropping the upper body between the knees and the arms are out front. So when it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, with this one, we're going to end up doing 1 set. Repetitions end up being 2 that you end up doing. Time ends up being holding for about 10 seconds at that end position, and the intensity ends up being light. Are you looking for a stretch in that mid-back, low-back, hip area? Now, lastly, the 5th one, when it comes to back pain relief exercises from yoga, ends up being a press-up movement. So going from that plank position into a press-up, holding for a couple seconds, and then coming back out into that plank movement, and then going back into that press-up movement. Really working on improving that mobility in that low back area, so improving the movement, and also really working on strengthening out the shoulders and the shoulder blade area. Perfect. When it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, sets end up being 1. Repetitions end up being, I would start off with like 2 to 5 repetitions. Time ends up being, you're holding for about 2 to 5 seconds, the end position. And then lastly, intensity ends up being light. We're working on mobility or movement in that low back spine area. So there you go. There's 5 exercises that kind of help with back pain relief that come from yoga. So give those exercises a go. Now, if you're still suffering from back pain and want some of my best tips and tricks when it comes to back pain, then what I recommend is you click right here. I have a brand new free report called 5 Tricks That Fight Back Pain and Tightness. Just click right here, let me know where to send the report, and I'll send you that report right away. Now, if you're watching this on a mobile device, tablet, smartphone, head down below into the description and click the first link, which will end up being exercisesforinjuries.com/backs. Let me know where to send that report, and I'll send you that report right away. Now, if you got benefit from this video, like the video. If you have any questions or comments for me, leave them down below in the comment section. And lastly, hit subscribe if you want to get future pain relieving videos.